the project metadata. Metadata matlab the data about data. So what is the name of your project? What is the package of your project? Your project will belong to what root package? So project is organized in terms of different packages. So what should be the root package, the main package under which different components of our project reside? So that has to be given here. So information about your project. What is the package name that will carry our project? What is the project name? The name of the project or the name of the applications. Our project will be identified that particular name. All those things, the metadata must be provided here. And what is the compression mechanism we are using in our project? The compression mechanism we are using in our project is a Java archive. There are basically two mechanisms. One is jar and another is war. Jar is Java archive and war is wave archive. So Java archive is used to compress our project. If the project is a sophisticated project, if the project is a complicated project, if the project is a very big project, normally it takes many bytes. It takes thousands of bytes to be stored into the computer. So it is also not convenient to transfer the big project from one platform to another. That is the reason why it should be compressed. The size is compressed. Many bytes, many thousands bytes of the project is compressed into less number of bytes, so that it will be easier for us to transfer the project from one platform to another platform. That's why packaging mechanism is used. And in Spring Boot, we can follow this mechanism, that jar. And what versions of Java we are using? Suppose version 8 or version 11 or version 17. So always try to use the latest version of the Java. So these are the basic properties of our project. Before developing the project, before starting the development process, we must set these properties in the Spring initializer. Then another important part of the set is adding dependencies. As far as security is concerned, minimum 2 dependencies must be added, minimum to minimum. One is web dependency, another is security dependency. These two dependencies, minimum to minimum. Along with these two, others can also be added for our requirement. But at least the web dependency and security dependency, these two must be added. So to add a dependency, click this button. A list will be provided. Along the list, you choose among the list, you choose Spring Web and you choose Spring Security. So automatically these two dependencies will be added with your project. Then finally, after giving all this information into this form, into this opening form, finally you click generate. This is how the development process starts using Spring initializer. When generate button is clicked, a zip file gets generated. A zip file representing your project that gets generated. That is your Spring Boot app. The Spring Boot app is nothing but your zip file. Spring Boot app. So you download that zip file and extract the zip file. Explore the zip file and import the zip file into a IDE. The zip file which has been created just now, that has to be imported to a suitable IDE so that we can add various components into our project. The zip file contains the format only, the structure of our project, the template of our project. So with the basic template, we have to add the model component, we have add the controller component, we have to add the view component. So basically, different components can be added. So all these components can be added with the help of ID. That's why it is necessary to import our project, which is in the form of zip file, to import our project to a suitable IDE. There are many IDE that supports Java. As we are developing our project in Java, so any Java enabled IDE is to be opened. So Eclipse is a Java enabled IDE. Visual Studio is a Java enabled IDE. IntelliJ IDEA is a Java enabled IDE. So all the IDEs does the same thing. It helps you in adding various components into your project, like model, control, view, etc. So after generating the zip file, we need to extract the zip file so that we can get our Spring Boot app. After getting our Spring Boot app, that must be imported into a suitable IDE. That can be done using these steps. This is the IDE screen, opening screen of the IDE. Select the file option, then go to the new option, then go to the project from existing sources. When you choose project from existing sources, it will ask you to enter your name of the project. Now you enter the name of the project here. You select your project from the list. Then project is imported to IDE. So when project is imported to IDE, then we need to incorporate security mechanism into our project. Now, before adding security mechanism into our project, we must know that by default, our project is available with default security mechanism. Due to the addition of this dependence, as and when you add Spring security dependency to your project, automatically your project is available with the default security mechanism. When you try to start your project, it will ask you to enter your name and user ID and password. So when you add this dependency, by default, your project is available with security mechanism. So that default security mechanism needs to be overridden. the default security mechanism need to be authenticated, customized. So for customization of default security mechanism, we must add these two files into our project. One is controller.java, another is config.java. These two files are to be added with our project, by which we can customize the default security mechanism. And these two files are created under this path. Source, click the source option in the project explorer. Go to the project explorer of the IDE. You will find the project explorer at the left hand side of the screen. Go to the project explorer, select source, under which there will be a main option, select main, under which there will be another option, that is Java, select Java. So this is the path. So under this path, we need to create two files. One is controller.java, another is config.java. And these two files, the code incorporated into these two files are necessary for customization of the default security mechanism, so that we can set our own user ID and password. Not only our own user ID and password, but also we can set the user ID and passwords for various users who may use our application. So password and user ID can be set for various users who wants to use who may use our application. So let us define first file, that is controller.java. As the name indicates, this is the controller part of our application. As we know, the controller part of our application is responsible for accepting client's request. The controller accepts the requests coming from the clients and processes them. The controller also responsible for invoking the view, so that view can be presented to the client as a response. So this is what very precisely a controller can do. Number one, it accepts client requests and processes the request. Number two, it invokes the view, so that the view can be presented to the client in the form of response. If there is a requirement of database handling, then also controller establishes the connectivity with the database and deals with the data which are there in the database. So controller is the key component of our web application. And what type of controller we are going to develop? As far as client server model is concerned, normally a web application implements the client server model. So when client server model is implemented by the web server, the controller must be a REST controller. The client server model works on the basis of the principles laid down by the rest. So your controller, our controller must be a REST controller. So this annotation indicates that the controller we are going to develop is a REST controller, because the controller will work on the basis of the principles laid down in REST. So this annotation indicates that controller is a REST controller. Then controller is nothing but a Java file. So public class controller, and in case of this particular controller, this is a very simple controller with only one method. With only one method, that is a delete method. For the sake of one example, giving a simple example, it is given. So this method will return this message. Whenever this method is invoked, it will give you this message. And this method is mapped with the request parameter, that is /delete. This is the request parameter. So get mapping annotation is used for the purpose of mapping a request parameter with the method. The method is mapped with the request parameter, and it is done by the get mapping annotation. So whenever client sends request with this parameter, whenever request is coming to the controller from the client with this particular parameter, immediately the controller will invoke this method, delete method. And when this method will get invoked, it will display this message. So this controller will do only one job. Controller Java that will do only one job, to invoke the delete method, which will display this particular message. And the method will be invoked only when the server encounters this keyword in the request phrase. That is what the controller will do. That is what is written here. The above Java file is used to set the controller for handling the incoming request from the client side. So it will handle the incoming request coming from the client side with this phrase, request phrase, with this request parameter. So that delete method gets invoked and this method is displayed. Then second file. Second file is config.java. This is also a Java file. The objective of this Java file is it will enable the web security mechanism. The config file will enable the web security mechanism by setting certain configuration parameters, so that the server which is executing your web application will come to know that as per the specification of these parameters, the security mechanism will get implemented. That is the very purpose for which the configuration settings are done. The configuration settings will let the server know how the security mechanism will be implemented. So config.java is a Java file that ensures, that enables the security mechanism. And enabling the security mechanism is done by this annotation. Enable web security. When this annotation is added with config.java, This annotation lets the server know how it will ensure how it will implement the security mechanism. So enable web security is the annotation. That is the very purpose for which the config file is designed. For enabling web security, the config file is designed. So this is a class file. This is a Java file. So it is designed in the form of a class. It must extend web security configurer adapter. Web security configurer adapter. This must be this must be extended by the config class. And this entity is an interface. The config class extends this interface. You might be knowing what an interface is. The interface is a mechanism to implement abstraction in Java. The interface carries some abstract methods. When any class, in this case it is config, when any class extends an interface, it is the responsibility of this class to override the methods defined within this interface. The fundamental principle of abstraction says that whenever a class extending an interface, the responsibility of this class is to override the methods, abstract methods defined within this interface. That is what is done by this class. Override annotation. It overrides this method that is defined within this interface. Configure method is an abstract method that is defined within this interface that needs to be defined here by the extending class, that is config. Similarly, another method that is also overridden here. That method is configure. So the methods, abstract methods defined in the interface needs to be overridden in the extending class. What is the purpose of overriding? The purpose of overriding is this method assigns authorization mechanism. What user will do what? This is authorization part of the security. Authorization specifies that when a user accesses the application, what he or she will do. So authorization is defined here. What user will do what. That is the very purpose for which this method is overridden here. So this is a object. This object is built by taking this class into consideration. Authentication manager builder. This is a library class. Using this class, this object is created. With the help of this object, the properties are set. This is the object and these are all properties of the object. Using various properties of this particular object, the authorization parameters are set here. That is the whole purpose of defining this method. This method is not defined within this interface, because interface contains only abstract method. The extending class, the class which extends the interface, it is the responsibility of that particular class to override the abstract method. Here, the abstract method is overridden for the purpose of giving authorities to various users to do different operations. So, with the help of this object, properties are set. This is the user, and this is the password attached to this user. When this particular user will access the application with this password, then it will perform the role of admin. So these are the three properties. With user is a property of this object. With user, password property, role property. So here the application defines that this particular user, when he or she will access the application, this particular user with this username and with this password, when the user accesses the application with this username and this password, then this particular user will do the admin role, will perform the admin role. That means all operations related to the website administration that can be done by this particular user. And another user is also authorized here with the username, this, and with the password, and the role assigned to the user is student role. That means this user with this username password is a simple user. Simply he or she can use your application to get some information. So this is a ordinary user with this username, password, and this role is assigned to the user. And this user is a admin user with this username, password, and role. So this method is overridden for the purpose of assigning various roles to different users. This is number one. Number two, configuring the API according to the rules. Now, API configuration. These configurations are related to the users. What user can do what? Now, this configuration is related to the API. So, what this configuration says? It uses one parameter, that is an HTTP object. That is an HTTP object. The HTTP object is created with the help of HTTP security class. The HTTP object is created with the help of HTTP security class. With the help of this particular object, these properties are set. What is the meaning of these properties? Along with some basic HTTP properties, authorize requests and matches this dot has role admin. What does it mean? The meaning of these properties is when the request which is coming from the client with this particular phrase, request phrase, because in our controller program, this request phrase is matched with the delete method. This request phrase is matched with delete method. So whenever a user sends the request, it is the responsibility of the server to match it. And which request, which user uh, sends that particular request has role must be admin role. The user which is having the admin role and matches delete dot has role admin. When this request comes from an admin, this particular request has come from an admin, then only it will display the form login. That means in response to this request coming from admin, the application will display the login form. That is the meaning of this property. The simple meaning of these properties are, when this request is coming from this user, simply the application displays the login form. So login form is displayed. Then the user can give the user ID and a password. Then only access will be granted to that particular user. So this is a simple example how authorization is given to different users to different tasks. Here authorization is given to 2 users, and when request is coming from this user only, request is coming from this user only, the application will display the login form. When request is coming from this user, application has no specification. Application will display nothing. That is not specified here. When you run the application, at the time of launching the application, when client request is coming from this user, the application has the specification to display the login form only when the request coming from this user. In response to the request coming from this user, login form will be displayed. That is what is defined here. So these two methods are synchronized methods. But when request coming from this user, what will happen? That has not been defined here. Only this thing is defined. So we must verify this fact at the time of running the application. You see, here the application is run using the admin role. When this request comes, localhost 8080/delete. When this request comes, only when the login form will be displayed. This is the login form. Jack is the name of the admin. This is the user ID. Sign in. Then what will happen? Delete method will be invoked. In response to this request, controller defines that when this request comes, when server encounters this request, the delete method gets invoked. And when delete method gets invoked, it displays this string. This is delete request. This is what exactly is happening here. When this request comes from the client with delete phrase, request parameter, login form appears, because that has been defined here. Login form appears. When request coming from Jack, the login form appears. login form appears. That is what is happening here. Request is delete, so login form appears. The admin gives the credentials. Then in response to write credentials, this message gets displayed. This is delete request. But when the request comes from a user which is assigned with the student role, the user which is assigned with the student role, this user assigns with the student role, what will happen? Nothing is specified here. What will happen? Nothing is specified. So when the user as a student wants to access the application, error message will appear. This error message will appear because nothing has been specified in the application what will happen when student accesses the database. What will happen when admin accesses the database, that has been specified. What will happen when a student accesses the database, that has not been specified. That's why this error message appears. This error page appears. So the number of users that the application, the number of users who wants to use the application in correspondence to the number of users, corresponding to the number of users, what the application will do, that must also be specified. As only one job is specified, so when admin accesses the application, that particular operation is performed. When another user, student, accesses the application, the error page appears because nothing has been specified in the application. The purpose of this example is to let you know how simply a login mechanism can be added with your application. The simplest way of adding login mechanism with your application is to define two files. One is controller.java, another is config.java. The controller.java is a REST controller that defines the mapping of request parameter with the method, request method, and config file contains the authorization details, what user will do what, the parameters required for authorization that has been set within the config file. So these are the two files, controller and config, that must be added to your project so that a simple security mechanism can be added with your web application. There are many variations of security mechanism. So incorporating security mechanism is not a simple process. So incorporating security mechanism is little bit complicated. But whatever we discussed today, these processes represent a simple mechanism to add security within your web application. Let us add another feature to our web application. Like login, after using the project, the user has to implement the logout feature. The application must be properly closed. an authorized user, after using the application, he or she must know how to close down the application, how to come out of the application. When your email account is logged in, after doing many operations, you must properly come out of the email account using the logout process. Similarly, after using your web application, you must properly come out from the web application by using the logout process. So login is the process of validation and logout is just reverse. Logout is the process of invalidation. Login, during the process of login, user gets validated. That is the process of validation. And logout is the process of invalidation. The process involves invalidating user's session. And when the authorized user is coming out of the application cleans off the related security context that is associated with the user or the session that was used by the user. The session which was used by the user, the information related to that particular session that are cleaned up when the user comes out of the application. So the process of logout involves two operations. Number one is invalidating the user session. Number two is cleaning of the session that was being used by the user. These are the two operations done by the logout mechanism. The Spring Security has its own default logout handling mechanism. So, Spring Framework having its own login mechanism as well as logout mechanism. So, login mechanism needs to be overridden so that many users can avail. Similarly, logout mechanism, the default logout mechanism can also be overridden, can also be customized, so that when somebody accesses the application, meaningfully he or she can come out of the application. So accordingly, the logout process must be customized. Now, how it can be done? So implementation of logout mechanism, there are certain steps involved in the implementation of logout mechanism. Step 1. First, a project is to be created using Spring Initializer by giving these properties and adding these dependencies. Web dependency, security dependency, these two are minimum. Web security dependency, because application we are going to develop is a web application, and this web application is to be incorporated with security mechanism. That's why these two are the basic dependencies that has to be added. Along with these two, Lombok and dev tools, these two can also be added. These two dependencies can also be added. The purpose of this one is to reduce the boilerplate code it helps in reducing the code needed for getter and setter methods. Yesterday, we had some discussions on getter and setter methods. So Lombok dependency is used for that particular purpose. Similarly, the dev tools mechanism, development tools. When this dependency is added with your application, various various development tools can be used in your application. So to make sure that your application is associated with a proper logout mechanism, the developer needs to add these dependencies minimum to minimum to the web application. When these dependencies are added and a project is created, the project explorer will look like this. This is the project explorer. Project explorer is a part of the IDE. After creation of the project will be generated in the form of a zip file. That zip file is extracted. After extraction of the zip file, it gets imported into the IDE. When the project is imported into the IDE will have this project explorer. So this is the project explorer that your IDE supplies to you. This is a Maven project, SRC source, main, Java, and this is your project. org.example sprint security logout. This is the package under which this project resides, Spring Security Logout Application. This is the name of your project. Spring Security Logout Application is the name of your project that is located under this particular package, org.example.spring security logout. The package name is determined as per the values specified in the metadata. The package name is determined as per the metadata values. So this is your package name. Under this package, your project resides. That is your Spring Security Logout application is your project. And this project contains a config and a controller. This is controller and this is config. Controller will specify how it will handle the request, and the config will specify the parameters, the logout parameters, on the basis of which the user can come out from the application. And this is your application.properties file. Yesterday we had some elaborated discussion on application.properties. This is your application.properties. This is your form.xml. Form is project object model that carries all the dependency details, form.xml. This is located here. Application.properties is located here. This carries the properties of the application, has been set. And Spring Boot sets the properties automatically. Most of the properties are set automatically, because feature of auto configuration is associated with Spring Boot. That is the advantage of using Spring Boot. Manual configuration is less required. This is step 1. Then step 2 is setting the properties value. Open the application of properties and set these things into it. Application name is Spring Security Logout. This is the name of the application. Spring Security Logout. Name of application, this one. This is the name of the application. Spring Security Logout. So that is specified here. And the application will run at this port 8080 of the server. And the username is user and password is user. This particular user, when uses the logout form with this username and password, the user who accesses the database with this username and password can use the logout form to come out from the application. That is the reason why these parameters are set in the application.properties file, so that the application will allow this user to log out from the application properly. When this particular user chooses the logout form, uses the logout form, he will be allowed to coming out of the application properly. So this is application.properties file. Then configuration file. So this one is configuration file. Security config. This annotation represents that it is a configuration file. Then this annotation ensures or enables the security. This particular annotation, these two annotations define that the class will ensure the web security by setting off the required configuration parameters. So this class contains one method, that configure method. Configure method has one parameter, that is a HTTP object. HTTP object is created with the help of HTTP security class. So this is the only parameter used by this method. And this method throws an exception. Whenever any exception is thrown by this method, it will be handled by the exception object. And this exception will be handled by the Java virtual machine. That is the meaning of throws exception. If it is not added with this method, then during execution, if at all any exception is thrown, that will not be handled properly and your application will stop abruptly. To prevent this, the exception handling mechanism is incorporated. This is how the exception handling mechanism is incorporated with this method. So this method uses one object as its parameter and it includes with it the necessary exception handling mechanism. So this particular object has these properties. The properties are set. The meaning of these properties are, it ensures the request from a authorized user. When the user is authorized, he or she can be permitted to coming out of the application. Use the logout form when the request is coming from the authorized user. So any request which is authenticated, so any request is a method, authenticated is a method, Those methods are called with the help of HTTP object. And these methods are defined in the HTTP security class. The meaning is when any request which has come from authenticated user and the user has supplied during the process of logging in, the user has supplied the informations, proper informations, then only logout form will appear. The whole meaning of these phrases are when the user is an authenticated user who is using the project, for that particular user, the logout form will be given. The application will supply the logout form. And when user gives credentials into the logout form, then logout success URL that will implemented, logout successful URL that will be implemented with invalidation of session. With invalidation of session by deleting this session ID. Each session is having a ID. At the time of logging out, the particular user which was using this session, the session was associated with a ID. So invalidating the session matlab the ID has to be deleted. That is invalidation. Then permission will be granted to come out of the application. So these are the meaning of these parameters. All these parameters are set with the help of HTTP object. And a HTTP object is a security object that is defined with the help of HTTP security class. Only when these parameters are set in the configuration file, then only you will implement the logout process properly. So after defining the configuration class, then controller. So controller is a REST controller. Simply it is a REST controller. What the controller will do? The controller will take you to the home screen. After logging out successfully, the controller will take you to the home screen of your application. Generally, what happens, you might have experiences. When you log out from an application, immediately home screen appears. And that is done by the controller. So this particular controller will take you to the home screen. Whenever logout happens. So here mapping of home request. This represents the home request. The mapping of request parameter slash with the home method, that is done by the controller. Home controller maps the request parameter that home with the home method. So when logout occurs, immediately the home method is invoked, and in response to this method, it will take you to the home screen. That means return home. That means home view will appear. Home is a view. Home screen matlab this is a view in the form of a view. So return this view. This view is defined here. This view is defined here. This is the view. This view is named as home.html. So this particular view is returned here by the home method. whenever log out happens, this method is invoked and it returns the home view which is defined here. This is home view which is defined here. The home page will appear with this configuration. This is the font. Whatever is contained within the home screen, that is displayed with this font family. Arial font, background color is so and so, and margin is so and so. So any text that is contained within the home screen that follows this font pattern, and heading of the home screen is displayed with this color. Heading of the home screen is displayed with this color, and any link that appears in the home screen, link that appears in the home screen, that is having these properties. And hover, hover matlab, whenever you go to that link, a indicator hand will appear, indicator palm will appear, and the link will change to this color. By default, the link will be displayed with the color, blue color. When you hover over the link, when you go to that link, the color changes to dark blue. That is what is specified here. This is the specification for the link. This is the specification of the link with hover. So these are the style parameters. In what style the home screen will appear. Whatever is displayed over the home screen, that is displayed using this font family with this color, heading color. This is the specification for link, and these are the specification for link hover. With this style sheet, welcome to home page will display with reference to the logout message. Successfully logout message. So in response to this home screen, this will appear. Well, this one will appear. Welcome to the home page, logout. This response will appear in response to this home page. In response to this home page, home.html. And this home page will be returned by this controller, home controller, when any user chooses the logout option. That is what is specified here. Again, login can be done. This user also helps in going into the application by following the process of login that happen here. So this method will be executed when logout is chosen. This method gets executed when login gets chosen. So the home controller is having both the facilities. It allows you to go to the login process. It also allows you to come out of the web application using the logout process. So these are the simple coding patterns that are used for the purpose of logging in, implementing logging in and logging out of an application. There are many variations of security mechanism. Security is a very big chapter, and there are many forms of security threat. Session can be hijacked, login password can be hijacked. There is a process called click hijacking. The hackers will misdirect you to click something misdirected by the hacker. If the user clicks something, then information will be automatically hijacked by the hacker. That process is known as click jacking. Cross site request forgery, CSRF. This is also another type of threat. So there are many threats that your application may encounter during its execution. Session hacking, click jacking, password hacking, CSRF, all those threats your application may face. So there must be a strong security mechanism associated with your project, with your web application, so that application will be sufficiently capable enough to deal with different types of threats that may come to it during its execution. Keeping all these things in view, so security is a very big concept. Security is a very vast concept that must be dealt with properly. What we discussed today, simply introduction to security. It will give you some idea how security mechanism can be implemented in a web application. Now it is your duty to explore more and more about security and how to incorporate various features of security into your web application. That is the very purpose for which I am giving you this link. This link carries, as I told you from the beginning, this link carries almost all 40 video lectures, starting from scratch, starting from introduction to developing web application to the extreme end. How a sophisticated web application with all the facilities, how a full-fledged web application with all the facilities can be developed. I hope it will help you. Definitely it will help you in developing a web applications. And I wish all of you a very successful career. You might have your examinations in near future. I convey my best of wishes for your examination. With this, we conclude this session. With this, we conclude.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Very good session, sir. Thank you. You're a great teacher.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir, please share today's work and yesterday's work also.
What?
Sir, please share all these slides.
I shall share this in the group. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay,
By
sir. Thank
today
you, sir.
evening, I share all the documents in the group itself.
Okay, sir.
Again, all the best to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
अभी नेक्स्ट क्लास तो 11 बजे है ना?
हाँ हाँ अरे भाई कौन से ग्रुप में शेयर कर रहे हैं सर? भाई एमसीए के लिए हम लोग अलग से ग्रुप बनाए हैं, एमसीए ऑनलाइन सपोर्ट ग्रुप नाम से। उसमें कहाँ है सर? उसमें तो मैं हूँ सर, है उसमें? हाँ जी सर हैं।
सपोर्ट ग्रुप
अभी तो आया
नहीं
नहीं
यार,
है,
कल
सपोर्ट ग्रुप में कुछ नहीं आया।
आया नहीं है यार, उस पे तो नहीं आया है कुछ। फिर तो निकल लिए।
ग्रुप में सर है ऑलरेडी ज्वाइन है।
अरे उन्होंने कोई डॉक्यूमेंट शेयर ही नहीं करा है ना।
अभी कर देंगे कुछ देर बाद।
तो ये 8 से 11 वाला अभी ब्रेक लिया है, क्या किया है?
कंक्लूड हो गया है।
खत्म हो गया?
हाँ जी, खत्म हो
हाँ
गया
हाँ
एकदम।
खत्म।
तो नेक्स्ट 11 बजे से है?
हाँ,
हाँ
11
11
बजे।
बजे से नेक्स्ट क्लास।
अच्छा ठीक है।
क्लास खत्म हो गई।
हाँ खत्म हो गया।
ठीक है भाई। सर ने कुछ इम्पोर्टेंट क्वेश्चन दिए क्या आज?
नहीं क्वेश्चन तो नहीं दिए, वो वीडियो का लिंक शेयर किए थे।
एक बार शेयर कर दोगे दोबारा?
हाँ ग्रुप में डाल देता हूँ।
हाँ